And we're all set, switched around.
Yeah, I saw you as the main host, but Marty had made me a alternative host.
Okay.
So I was still able to get in and start the meeting. So I've started the Zoom portion of it, so you should be able to join it.
Okay.
Oh, I am showing up now.
That's because I just elevated you to a panelist. And I just made you co-host. Hi, Chris. Can you hear me? This is Kirsten. Chris, I cannot hear you. You're not muted, but I cannot hear you.
Megan. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Chris. I just wanted to remind you that right now we're live on YouTube. So as people come in, we want to keep the conversation professional.
I'm not getting any sound.
Okay, I'll come in just a sec.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Megan, was MCAT invited to this meeting?
Me, and there were a lot of reasons why I wanted to be involved. As a physician, I was really seeing how this pandemic was really ravaging my patients and my community. As you know, I'm in the New Orleans area, and we were one of the hot spots in March. And so I'm seeing this.
Hey, you guys.
Hey, Chris, do you know what that was? Were you listening to something?
I must have been listening to a podcast or something, and I was muted, so I didn't hear it until just now.
Okay, that went over the airwaves on our YouTube. So if anybody is watching on YouTube, we apologize. That was just a flub.
Now it's a little NPR. All right, we got 4 minutes.
Into conduct meeting or just?
Please get into conduct meeting, get it onto live stream and start recording. Because I don't think MCAT's here today, right?
I don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, get it recording.
And so, and when I do conduct meeting, I'll talk to someone, I'm sorry.
Hey, Chris, doesn't look like we have anybody joining us.
Not yet. It's they're dropping like flies today.
Did you
Oh.
receive emails or notification from any of the other members that they weren't going to be able to make it?
Yeah, so I heard this morning from Josh Nichols. He's sick. He actually has COVID-19.
Oh, no.
Yeah, hanging in there, but didn't feel up to it. And then I just just saw an email a few minutes ago that Amber wasn't going to be able to make it. Amber Cheryl. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a small group, but everyone else I think will make it, which is four other people.
Okay. Well, we can let people know we're just waiting. We've got a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Chris, this is Kirsten. I just wanted to mention that Megan is pretty new to using our agenda management software. So if you could allow her the opportunity to take roll, that'd be great for practice.
All right, sounds good. So it looks like my video is still off.
Oh, okay, just a second. I can take that.
Hello, everybody. This is Jeremy Flesh.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hi, Chris.
Okay, you should all be able to start your video now.
Brian, you're facing us these days. You must be working at home.
Yeah. I'm coming off of quarantine today or tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, well, we've got another member who's on quarantine now. Josh is.
Or is he?
Yeah.
From a close contact, I presume?
Yeah, he's actually has the disease.
Oh, does he?
The virus, yeah. So I don't know. He didn't say how he got it, but yeah. So far, I don't really know too many people who have gotten it, but there's one. All right. Well, it's 12:02. I'm hoping we'll get a couple more folks still yet today. I did hear from Michael that he would attend, and I'm pretty sure Scott is also going to attend. Amber said she won't, but anyway, so we're going to call the Missoula Energy and Climate Team to order. This is the regular meeting on Thursday, November 12th, 2020, from noon to 2. Today, calling roll is Megan. Megan is the new city clerk individual that working under Marty Rubenstein, and so this is her first attempt at our remote Zoom meetings. So she's going to start off by calling the roll. And so Megan, take it away.
Great, thank you. Chris,
Here.
Jeremy,
Present.
Michael, Brian.
Michael just joined the meeting.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Brian's here.
Scott, Josh, Amber, and Chase.
Yeah, Chase is traveling today. All right. So did you get Michael that was also here?
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Megan. Yeah, so Megan will be helping us out. So we should all get to say hi. I got a chance to chat with her the other day on the phone, and between her and Kristen, we've got a really great team, and we've got all our meetings scheduled on Thursday from noon to 2 for the next 6 or 7 months. It's pretty exciting stuff. I'm very happy about that. So, all right, next up is the approval of minutes from the August 4th meeting. So anyone had a chance to take a look at those and have any comments on those? Anybody wish to move to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. I don't think we can get a second on that. All in favor of the approval of the minutes from August 4th, so say aye.
Aye.
All right. That sounds unanimous. Does that work, Megan, or do you want to do a roll call on that?
Chris, before we move forward with that, do we have a quorum today?
We have a quorum, so 8, we need 5, although we don't actually, because the alternates don't count. So we have, so a quorum for 7 is 4, correct? So we have 4.
Correct. Okay,
So we have a quorum.
great, thank you.
Yeah, so we, at one point, Megan, just background, we have 2 alternates plus the main members. And we used to count them in when we were doing quorums. And I think after review of the bylaws, we don't include the alternates from the standpoint of establishing a quorum. All right, so that's those. Next up, announcements. So as some of you saw that email just a little bit ago, Gwen is moving on. She's obviously been on the team since as long as I've been on the team. I don't know quite how long, but certainly we've valued her opinion and her input, and she's going to be a tough one to replace. I will ask her to see if she has any suggestions. She brings some unique perspective to the team that we'll have to work to figure out. She was literally the only female, the only Native American on the team, and so we want, of course, maintain as a diverse group as possible. So we'll be looking at that going forward, but we certainly appreciate all her service.
I completely agree with your comments, Chris. It'll be hard to fill her shoes. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, upcoming meetings, everyone got that announcement. So we have, besides this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 meetings scheduled for the same time and place. So feel free to let folks know. What's nice about having these out meetings scheduled is it's going to make it a lot easier for us to have guest speakers and whatnot, which we really haven't been having. Like I was hoping to have Chase today, but I told him just less than a week ago, and he had already scheduled something else, but he will be here for the December meeting. But this will be nice. So if folks are thinking about any speakers or guests or anything, now's the time to reach out, because we've got all these meetings scheduled. So there's that. There was one thing I just threw it on here at the end. I just got something here. Did everyone see that article about the corners? I think that's what it's called. The new low-income housing subdivision built by the Missoula Housing Authority out off Mullen. So it's 14 units, they're apartments geared toward folks that make like 35% of the mean income for the folks in the valley here. And they were looking at trying to do some energy conservation efforts, but weren't really sure how or whether that was going to fit in their budget. And they coordinated with Climate Smart Missoula and the Missoula Federal Credit Union to get some carbon offsets to provide funds for ground source heat pumps. And so how this worked is, so Climate Smart Missoula, and there's a web page for this, set up what's called the Missoula Footprint Fund. And what they're kind of the banker, the middleman. So Missoula Federal Credit Union had they're looking to use carbon offset credits, some sort of REC or whatever, to reduce their total carbon footprint to zero. So they obviously can't do it with, they just put in their new solar panels at their main building, and they've done a lot of other things, but obviously that's not enough. So they were going to use money in some sort of REC type thing. And then, so that money then goes to the fund, the bank, to fund specific energy conservation, renewable energy projects. And so then they use that money to help pay for the ground source heat pumps at the corners, which is kind of cool. So we'll see how much that gets used, but certainly it sounds like Missoula Federal Credit Union has additional dollars for this, and maybe some other businesses in town who also are looking for offsets, but would buy that on the open market, and have those credits, who knows where. With this new system, they can actually keep their credits local and see a direct impact, which is pretty cool. So, and I believe that's mtfootprintfund.org. And I think you can also link to it through the Climate Smart Missoula.
Chris, you said MT Footprint.
Yeah, or not MT, Missoula. Maybe it's
Missoula Footprint.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
That's okay. I think that model is a very interesting one, and something that we might want to talk about further in the meeting or dig in a little bit deeper, because that, potentially does provide the funding mechanism for so many renewable energy alternatives because I think that comes up a lot when you're talking to individuals or individual homeowners. How do I pay for this $10 or $10,000 investment, or maybe $20,000 investment, if I don't have that money sitting in the bank?
Right.
And, if I know that it will pay itself back, maybe not 100%, but if it would pay itself back 70% within X number of years, I would be very interested to see more and dig deeper into that financing model, because I think that could provide some good options.
Yeah, maybe we'll ask. We have not had Amy Klingman at our meeting in a while. Maybe we can ask her to come by and explain it in greater detail at the next meeting or the one after that. Because it certainly has some real potential, and it is very innovative.
Right.
And
along with Clearwater Credit, it's Clearwater Credit Union, correct? That's
they're the funding source. So I don't know how I've not done carbon credit banking, but I've done wetland banking, and so there's a lot to setting those up, because they're legal entities, right? They have to report to the IRS. They hold money. They hold instruments of value, like the ground source heat pump. And so I imagine they've had to go through quite a bit and to get this set up, but it would be interesting. I would love to see what the legal regulatory end of this is. I have no idea how it actually works in our current legal environment.
Right.
Let alone, yeah, what other projects? I guess my guess would be that it would have to go to a nonprofit or a governmental or quasi-governmental entity like the Housing Authority or something. It could go to individuals as well, I guess. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, it brings up an interesting, scenario. If you have somebody that's living in a house, they expect to be there for many years, but 5 years down the road, they end up selling the house. How does that shake out from funding sources and
Yeah, and it would have to go on the title to the house. There's a lot of examples where where you have a low income housing and it's encumbered for how much you could sell it for in the future. So it's like a conservation easement. There's a conservation easement that limits your ability to what you can sell it for. So in this case, since it's real property, the ground source heat pump, it probably had to come in under the title somehow and be encumbered somehow that way.
Thanks for bringing that up, Chris. And I think maybe this is an opportunity for us to engage in one of our new directions that we were looking at of being an information nexus between local regulatory agencies and the public on things that are available out there. And this might be a good thing to be able to advertise to the public in what you and Jeremy were just both talking about, and how the public can access these sorts of resources for their own projects.
All right, that sounds good, Michael. Thank you. All right. Any other announcements that folks have that are not on the list? All right, so next up, number 5, public comments on items not listed on the agenda. So for anybody out there who might be on the Missoula YouTube channel or on our MCAT system, they can visit www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts to watch if you're not already. And if you'd like to make a comment, you can call the city at area code 253-215-8782. And after you do that, you put in the meeting ID 960-049-3694. And then through our folks, Kristen and Megan, they can bring you into the meeting. So that number again is 253-215-8782, meeting ID 960-049-3694. So we'll give folks a minute or so just if they're trying to figure that out and get through the system.
So Chris, if I may mention something while we're waiting, I'm not clear. I'll have to look this up and understand it further. But so the bank is providing some kind of funds for people to make these heat pump investments, and then with that they generate carbon offsets, and then the bank sells those carbon offsets. Is that?
No, that would be the classic model. This one is literally the bank funds went to purchase the ground source heat pumps, and then they use that some way to create a credit toward their carbon offsets. Now, was that formalized through some sort of banking mechanism? How many credits is whatever they donated worth? It's a darn good question. I I have no idea. The amount of information, even on the webpage, is a little thin, particularly when it comes to that more legal end of things. You know, how are the credits established? Who holds the credits? Can you buy and sell the credits? You know, it seems like they're bypassing a lot of the standard carbon rec sort of market and this approach, but I don't have the details.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is an update from Chase. When I put this on there, I wasn't sure if he was going to make it, but he was very kind in sending us some documents with an update. I contacted him yesterday, forgetting that it was Veterans Day, and of course he was at home working. So as we know, Chase works way too hard. But he sent along this, there was two main elements to his updates. One is the energy savings performance contract, and as folks recall, the city put out an RFP to recruit a company that would perform these energy saving performance audits, and then can contract back with the city to help fund these projects and get a piece of that money. And the way that works is they, as you recall maybe, and I'm having to recall, the city goes into contract with the company. In this case, it's a company called McKinstry. They establish which facilities and which type of energy projects they might wish to jointly go in on. McKinstry then comes in, does what they call a audit grade, something grade audit,
Investment grade audit.
investment. Thank you. This is good for me because I'm having to think about it. And if they find they can generate some offsets with a project, in other words, if they add LED lightings to a building, and that costs $50,000, the city, Brian, maybe you can help me on this. Now the city, and somehow the McKinstry pays for it, but then the city pays them back through their normal energy bills and pays it off that way.
Yeah, that's the concept. Basically, they pay off the loan through the energy savings.
Pay off the loan. So they're taking out a loan on their bond market or through whatever commercial banking they wish to pay for the project, and then the city pays it back through what they would normally pay for the lighting for that building until that loan's paid off, and then they make a little money somehow at the end, make their profit as well.
So I did not have a chance to review this document before the meeting, but I think the question I was going to ask might be answered there in step number 2 on this paper, as far as what is included and what is not included.
This is just a phase 1 amendment. They're number 2. You're right. This is what's going to be included in the first phase. There could be subsequent phases.
Okay. And so this has not been approved by City Council as of right now. So
No.
Okay.
It's expected. So these parts, or all of these 3, 1, 2, 3 are expected to go to, and they'll come through the Energy and Climate team at our next meeting on December 10th. Then they'll go to City Council committees, I'm assuming Parks and Conservation, but maybe Finance as well. And then once those have signed off, then it'll come to the full City Council for approval.
Okay.
And yeah, the 3 pieces are an energy saving performance contract, the master contract that governs all of this process going forward. And then the phase 1, the intergovernmental agreement amendment, that basically allows the city then to work with their divisions, in this case, Parks and Rec, the Missoula Fire Department, Missoula Parking Commission, and so forth, to have these audits performed. So at that point, if they find a project, then they'll enter into a sort of a subcontract, I'm thinking maybe an amendment to the master contract to do that work. The city also wants to enter into a master planning addendum by which McKinstry helps the city coordinate across the city entities and elements to do these energy performance contracts, so they don't end up becoming piecemealed, as it were. That seems to be what that is. And we'll certainly hear more about it from Chase next time, but I definitely wanted to have that out there because when he comes to us, it'll be good for us to have thought about some of these things in case we have any questions or comments or for next time. So this is useful. So we might do a little more research on some of this stuff in preparation for our December 10th meeting.
Right.
But it definitely it's moving forward. I think, COVID slowed it down a little bit, but this, this is actually more than what we originally heard, like this master planning addendum. This was a new one. So that's really great. It'd be a lot of very useful projects that come out of something like this. Any comments or questions on energy savings performance contracts?
Yeah, I'll just mention that the University of Montana has already executed something similar with McKinstry. And I know that the county had put out an RFP for a similar process. I don't know if they made their selection yet. I think that was coming due maybe by the end of the year. So it'd be very interesting to see who they choose. And if perchance McKinstry is common to all three entities, if there's some way that we can collaborate among three entities in some grander type of scheme.
Brian, has the University of Montana begun the contract with McKinstry?
Yes.
And have you selected sites, or how far along are you in that process?
We have a much more convoluted type of contract. The first piece of that contract is a combined heat and power plant, and we're proceeding with that so that unless something unforeseen happens, that will get built. But then as a adjunct to that, we are looking at a whole bunch of, I imagine the same thing the city is, a whole bunch of other additional projects. We're looking at retro commissioning, investment grade audits on some other buildings, looking at lighting upgrades across the whole campus, irrigation improvements. I mean, there's a whole smorgasbord of things. Not all of those will get funded, but that's what we're looking at initially.
Okay.
A couple of things. One on working jointly. We're obviously the city county joint operations, are expanding every day. You read something new about the two governments working together. We'll talk more about the federal building later, but the 100% clean electricity is another great example. And I also have read that the university and the city, are jointly doing some efforts. I know COVID is one, but it seemed like there were some quotes from the president there about other efforts that the university is doing in coordination with the city. Do you have any information on those, Brian?
I think I read the same release that you read. And those were just suggestions, sort of off the cuff suggestions. Well, I don't know how much off the cuff, but like combining police departments, combining library resources, since the city's building this brand new library. There may be a couple other things, maybe ground labor type of, snow removal, that type of thing. That was just sort of to get the discussion rolling.
Right. Well, we should stay on track with that because, we obviously energy efficiency, energy conservation, renewable energy could also be one of the lead out projects, if particularly since the city and the university are both using this same energy service company. That seems like a great opportunity to at least have some joint discussions, if not joint projects, but bring together the parties from the city and the university and McKinstry to have some discussions about what one's doing and the other, and sharing ideas at the very least. And we certainly could play a part of that in our organization.
Yeah, agreed. this might be an interesting thing to do at a subsequent meeting, but McKinstry has done some interesting work on this regard in Spokane with, it wasn't Gonzaga. There's another university there in Spokane, Washington State or something. I'm not sure what, but they did a what they call an eco district between the city of Spokane, some industrials, the utility, Avista, and the one of the colleges there in town. And a very interesting project. It's probably about an hour long. They did a webinar on that a few months ago. It might be interesting to review that, to see some of the places where they found collaboration among, these different entities. And we've talked before with McKinstry and the city and the county, for that matter, on a similar type of rollout. I don't know that we have quite the pieces that we'd need to put together something as elaborate as Spokane did, but at least getting everybody at the table would be a great starting point.
All right, so we'll start with obviously we can talk to Chase about it at the next meeting, and we can also invite representative from McKinstry to our meeting, since we have representatives from the city and the university. So that might be also a good way to do this. But yeah, that'll be a follow-up for the next meeting. And just a quick question on what their capabilities are. I mean, when you say a project, could these guys handle a $10 million project, or what sort of dollar values are we looking at the upper end, or even at the lower end? Is a good question.
They look at it all. Our CHP, combined heat and power project, is 20 million. So certainly that's in their wheelhouse. They do this across the nation on all kinds of levels. They have a construction side of their business, consulting side, energy retrofit side. I mean, they're a pretty wide-based, far-ranging company. I don't know that any project's too big or too small.
Excellent. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, we'll just keep moving at this point, but I know Michael needs to leave us at 1, so we want to make sure we hit what we can. But this is definitely be something that will continue on our radar. I expect that our team will play a larger part in this in terms of reviews of some of this material and referrals to City Council and Parks and Conservation. Okay, the next one up is the Northwest Energy Implementation Plan. And as you know, the city has been, or Chase has worked with Diana Mineta and I can't remember the gentleman's name at Northwest Energy to put together their initial agreement. And so we also had that draft scope of work that came forward, that energy master plan, that second document we received from these guys, and it outlines the broad areas in which the city and I think Northwest and the county agreed that they can work on. I was involved in some of this. I think, Brian, you were involved in some of this when they were trying to set this up, trying to figure out their broad areas, and their broad areas are data. So data management, automation and such, benchmarking, trying to establish, what our current consumption is, our baseline level of energy usage, and then look at how that might change in the future with the application of some projects. Goal setting, determine building and facility energy goals based on building data and benchmarking. So you used the 2 previous ones. Ensure goals support and are aligned with carbon neutrality by 2025. That's in the Energy and Conservation and Climate Action Plan. Setting goals might look at like minimum energy efficiency standards, stretch standards, energy use intensity, net zero energy. So a lot of really big pie in the sky stuff, that's for sure. Next up is energy utility forecasting and trends. And that would be interesting to see what information the Northwestern Energy has that we don't have, that might help us guide some of the projects that the city's undertaking or jointly could take on with the county and Northwestern Energy. policy and practice, develop and propose policies and practices, procedures to guide future retrofits. So what minimum standards, do you use existing standards? Do you make your own? How do you do what you said you're going to do, in other words? Employee engagement and education. So you bring everyone within the city and county governments and others on board, so they are looking for these opportunities as well. And find the funding and finance, research, development, propose funding and finance opportunities, always a big issue. So that is a huge list of things. But this will, once they have this, it'll come forward and we'll get a chance to look at it. Right now, everything's in draft. And hopefully we'll have a more thorough draft plan for review before the 10th. We'll try to get it out so everyone have a chance to look at it. But it's going to involve this draft scope of work that we're looking at now. I hope they flesh some of these out. These are bullet points. And when I look at some of these, I'm like, this could mean a lot of things. But I guess we'll see. It was interesting in doing that. It was kind of a greenwashing. No, neither of those things. A brainstorming event that was put on by Climate Smart Missoula to try to bring out what are the primary things that the city and the county would be interested in working under this MOU with Northwestern Energy. And it was interesting because there was of course, there's some people that are very excited about this. There's obviously a bunch of folks that are somewhat skeptical about it. And no one really knows what's going to happen. Although if passed as prologue, it's going to be a long slog, and we better be prepared for that. So just as well we're not running it, but we'll definitely spend time working with Chase and Diana and others. So let me open up the floor at this point for other comments or questions. All right, seeing none, we'll just keep moving here. We'll get a whole lot more detail on all of this stuff when Chase is with us, and we can ask him questions. Next up is recruitment of new team members. We've obviously lost a few folks. We're down a handful. Robin, Gwen, and others. So we need to start recruiting. So I've been working with Kristen and Megan about getting those announcements up on the vacancy webpage. We do have one person who's contacted us independently and is interested. And so I'll follow up with him, and that's Andrew Valenis, the ED from the Missoula, the Montana Renewable Energy Association. And I hope folks got to watch some of their presentations this summer. That was really a good program they put on. So it would be very exciting to have Andrew on board. But besides real experts like Andrew, we're also looking to diversify our board. So any thoughts or names, or if you want to reach out to folks that you know in your communities, please feel free to do so. Those will probably get posted before too long. And I think we're posting for 3 positions. When we talked to Marty at the last meeting, she suggested that we didn't do 2 alternates, but 1. She didn't see a lot of reasons for 2. So for now, we'll just stay with the 1. So 2 members, voting members, and 1 alternate member is what we're going for. Anybody else have any other names or thoughts or folks we should reach out to? Please let me know. I'll be glad to write an email, make a call.
I think we should also reach out to Gwen, and if she has anyone that she thinks would be a good fit for our team. I think that would be a good thing if Gwen has any suggestions or recommendations.
That sounds good. And along those lines, I'll probably also reach out to Rob and see what he knows from his environmental justice contacts. a little more on the sociological and policy ends than the technical end, where we kind of sometimes get a little heavy on.
Right. Sounds good.
All right, so let's shoot for having a full team here after the first of the year. Next up is the strategic planning process. So as I may have mentioned, we didn't have a meeting last month, and I got sucked into well, I wasn't. I had work that kept me. I was out of town for 3 weeks, and then getting ready for this project, and then coming back off of it. I haven't had a chance to work on this a whole lot. So the next steps haven't changed. The goals haven't changed. So we've got the write-up from all the information we received from our team talking and talking with individuals like Chase and Amber. And so next up is discussions with the key stakeholders, like Amy, Diana Mineta. We actually generated a list at the last meeting. I should send it out in case anyone has any other thoughts. So I'll do that, and then I'll set up, they can either do it by email or we can do phone calls. And the way it's set up now, Jeremy and I would be on these calls and just generally asking questions. What do we think we should be doing? What do you think we should be doing? How do you think we can get to our next steps? What should be the goals? Do we need to change policies? Do we need to change any city regulations in order to meet this, our new goal of being a more impactful, integrated element within the city government? Anybody have any other thoughts on how we're doing or how we should get there?
They just had a big change of city offices as far as planning, zoning, projects, building, all that goes. Aaron Pehan's the new director of the combined, what was the old development services in Missoula, and then the housing community development offices. So she'd be a good one to reach out to as well.
All right, thank you. Right. Yeah, so again, not a lot on there, but we will keep it going. We'll shoot for having some sort of if maybe not a draft plan, at least some draft direction, things that need to happen, things that we wish to have happen. Certainly by, the end of the year, beginning of next year. I think that's pretty reasonable. We need to keep moving. There's just so much going on right now. We need to be better engaged. All right, number D, for public service proposal for methane to energy. Everyone read that article, I'm assuming? There was an editorial follow-up, somebody from Missoula, or from Energy Smart. Missoula also was opined about the fact that that's not really the way we should do it, because it's all about methane that can't be captured, and we just need to start composting, and that's really what we need to do, and so forth and so on. But in general, the idea was that Republic Services at least acknowledged that they would start considering working toward a methane to energy system. And so that's pretty exciting to hear. I don't know what the long-term thoughts are, but one thing I asked Chase just yesterday who to contact over there, and he provided me with a contact. And one of my thoughts is that one of the best ways to do this is to do, a little fact-finding mission, aka a field trip over there. I know some of you guys have already done that. Probably Brian, you've probably already done that a few times. Does that seem something worthwhile to go do a trip to look at their methane capture system and their burner system and that sort of thing?
Yeah, are you talking about the group as a group, or
yeah, as a group, right? Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting. The couple times I did it, we didn't get much further than the guard area, the gate area. you know, but I still think it's interesting. It's interesting to look a little bit closer at the incinerator and how that performs, the flames actually contained inside of it. And yeah, I think it's good to understand that it's not completely methane, that it's 50% at best methane, along with a bunch of other gases that are not desirable and that are
Brian, what did
difficult to.
You said it's 50% methane, and what was the other item?
It's a bunch of other items. It's other gases, mostly CO2, but a lot of other toxic, noxious gases that are difficult to filter and remove.
So like hydrogen sulfide, which is pretty corrosive, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if hydrogen sulfide per se was in there, but some other things. I once had analysis. I'll see if I can dig it up again and take a peek at it, pass that along if I can find it.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to look at is you know, what organizations like Republic Services, do they have any of these plants in other parts of the country, and if they proved technologically feasible, economically feasible. And there was some debate. I was talking to somebody about just how much methane was there, but I thought I read that it was equivalent to the amount of natural gas used by half the houses in town or something on a daily basis. I thought it was a really big number, but I can't quite remember now.
Now, again, we looked at that a long time ago, and unless things have really changed, which they could have, but the number was pretty small. We were looking at using it for our as a fuel for our boilers, and it definitely could not. It could supply some of the fuel, but not all of it. Definitely not all of it. So it was a pretty, I don't know what you'd call minor. It probably, you know, account for several houses anyway. I don't know about half the houses.
Well, I was thinking about, you know, the methane they capture at the wastewater treatment plant, and it operates about a 700 horsepower engine, you know, equivalent to a 700 horsepower diesel. So, you know, the same as you'd have in a full size truck and semi, and they were running it 24/7. So maybe in that sort of range. But it'd be interesting to know, because certainly it's quite valuable for the city in their wastewater treatment plant process. That seems to be quite economical for them, because that generator and that all the equipment was paid for in a reasonable amount of time. And as far as go ahead, Jeremy.
I think the idea of doing a fact-finding mission at the landfill would be excellent. I do what you mentioned earlier as far as the benefits of composting over landfill. I do recognize what they're saying, but I also think it's important to move forward on multiple fronts. I mean, you know, it's not going to happen. Neither project is going to happen overnight, whether it's methane, you know, methane to energy, or, you know, greater composting and less items going to the landfill. I think there's opportunity to improve on both fronts.
Yeah, and certainly I think they're also must be looking at, you know, they have their permit for methane capture for their waste, for their landfill permit, and I'm wondering, you know, they're probably capturing as much as is technologically feasible, and probably that's what the level, the standard is on their permit. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to capture more of the methane coming off the landfill than they current capture, you know, with their cap system and their various piping systems. But one thing, this is just my little pet thing that I've been doing. We took that field trip to the wastewater treatment plant, and of course, everything that goes down our drain, some methane is produced in some of the early stages, but most of the methane is coming through at the late stage where they're capturing it and using it to generate electricity. So, and then of course that material ends up in Garden City compost. So what I do is I try to put all my putrescibles down the garbage disposal, because without having to set up a compost system in my backyard, I'm composting probably 80 or 90% of my putrescibles, thanks to the city's methane capture system. So, you know, I don't know, what I was thinking is we should tell everybody that, but I don't know if the city wants everyone to know that. Is that going to overwhelm their wastewater treatment plant? Brian? Oh, you're off, Brian.
I think they do want to know that, in that this university looked at doing that a while back. You know, we're looking at putting in our own type of composting, and we have putting in our own type of composting systems. And the city at one time came to us and said, just put it down the drain and it makes perfect sense, as you're saying, Chris, you know, because you have a central location where you process this rather than everybody individually or certain industrials or commercial developers doing their own thing. Just have one big community-wide thing that everybody can access.
I know one of the issues with Garden City Compost is a big enough market. It seemed like they were selling a lot of theirs when they were doing a lot of mine reclamation efforts, like over toward Kellogg and whatnot. And I think that market has been shrinking some, and there's not enough call for it locally. I know I put it on my yard. It's one of the greatest fertilizers I can put on my yard, but you saw that they had a big marketing campaign this year. They had billboards, stuff on the radio, kind of on TV, all about buying Garden City Compost. And it seems like their issue right now is a market for all this high quality compost they're producing. And we might have a lot because, you know, in parallel, the city just bought out the poplar trees, as you guys may have heard, that are adjacent there and that they use for their wastewater, their tertiary wastewater treatment plant to remove nitrogen and phosphorus. I think it's mostly phosphorus. And so at some point they may end up running that through Garden City Compost and just have a staggering amount of compost and a market that somehow we need to fill, but I don't know how that's going to get filled.
Yeah, I think that's, as all three of you have said, I don't think it's a bad idea at all to be pursuing some connections out there at Republic Services. And like Brian, I was out there a number of years ago with a teaching project where we were looking at the methane digesters out there. And as you brought up appropriately, Chris, that hydrogen sulfide production does eat up the parts in that pretty significantly. There's quite a bit of upkeep and maintenance that has to be done on methane digesters, but it's certainly, you know, something else to look into. As Jeremy was talking about, it doesn't hurt to think about these projects and see what could be applicable. One thing I think we need to really be thinking about too is we're looking at two diametrically opposed administrative changes, one federally and one state, that are both going to be happening about the same time in the next 70 days or so. And those are going to directly affect everything we do here locally. You know, in one degree or another, some of the effects will be much stronger than the others. But it might be worth starting to think about what that picture would look like too, between what might be happening on the state level as opposed to what might be allowed at the federal level, and how we might be able to ensure we protect some things locally and are still able to advance some other projects.
Yeah, it seems like some sort of methane regulation. I think there was some for landfills. They have to have their operating plan. I think that came down through the EPA and the state implementation on that. And I think more recently what was included in that their operating plan changed and may change again with specific contact or connection with methane emissions. I would think we're going to see that certainly at the landfills. It may not be immediate, but I could definitely see that happening, as well as at the wastewater treatment plants. You know, nothing's going to happen that fast. Missoula will undoubtedly be far enough ahead that I don't know if the new regulations for methane emissions will affect us too quickly. But I agree, Michael. That's probably, you know, certainly on the methane standpoint, we're going to see more of that.
I think this also, segues well into discussion about the Montana legislature and potential legislation that we will want to know about and have input on come January, February, March with the session. And Michael, I know that's something that you've done a lot of work on in the past.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy, you had said you would be interested in helping out with that for the next legislative session. So if you were, and the group was still interested in me working with that, I'm happy to work with that, work on that with you.
I would be
like a work-
happy to assist you, Michael.
Sounds like a work group, not a subcommittee. We don't do subcommittees. Great, sounds good. All right, so we'll set that up and keep this discussion going about composting with the wastewater treatment plant or Garden City compost, or I know that the 0 by 50, they're talking about composting, and I know we've got some small efforts going on locally, some private companies that are trying to work on that. But in terms of compost, regardless of where it ends up, we are way behind the curve on that in this town, in this county. It certainly seems like, from our standpoint, it's just about methane. It's not about any of the other stuff, because there's a lot of other people working on it. But from the standpoint of looking at methane emissions and reducing methane emissions, I think we should keep an eye on that. Last up is there's been some articles about the Missoula Federal Building and how the city and county have an engineering group, I think A&E, out there doing engineering evaluations, and may actually be doing an energy audit out there at the federal building for the potential takeover. And so, as we've talked about in this group, I think creating a energy efficiency renewable energy project at the federal building and making it a demonstration project is something that I certainly think is a great idea. We've had some great examples, like at the new Missoula Library, but doing a retrofit building, that's something that's very visible, and would be really one of the first major sort of demonstration combined energy reduction projects the city might take on. So I took the initiative to write up a little letter here. If folks had a chance to look at it, just sort of trying to get that ball rolling before all the decisions are made, that all we really need to do is throw in a new HVAC and maybe a couple of windows and we're good. I mean, to some extent, that's kind of what it sounds like in reading the articles, that they'll just do the minimum to get the building livable or workable, and then be done. But I think we need to keep moving on this. So the thought with this letter, once we're ready, is we would actually send it to Amber, and then would talk to her about running it through her committee, her subcommittee, and then seeing if it might go to the city council as a whole. At least that was my thinking. So I'm going to sort of open the floor to what folks think. I think we've talked that it's a good idea, but I'd like to hear any other thoughts about if it still is, or if it is, how do we make it happen?
Chris, I didn't completely read your letter. I just scanned it before this meeting. It looks good. I agree with your approach. I don't know. It all comes down to money, right? And I would love to see, I've been trying to do this at the university for almost a decade, but to try to get a LEED certified existing building. We have plenty of LEED new construction buildings. And if you're familiar with LEED, there's a variety of categories that you can get certified under. Existing buildings, I think, is one of the most important categories. And it's one of the least categories attempted because of the complications. Of course, it's pretty easy if you have the money to build a brand new construction. You just build it the way you want it. But it's much more difficult to take existing building stock and make it energy efficient and comply with LEED standards. I would suggest that, to the degree that there's any appetite for it, that, push forward with at least, existing buildings certification, or if not that, maybe an Energy Star, attempt to get an Energy Star certificate or some type of certification for the new remodel.
Sounds good.
I think it also could be used as a, as you mentioned here, Chris, that it can be used as a promotional piece and advertising to plant the seed in people's brains of how they can, also conserve energy and gather energy from different sources from a personal perspective. Just because this is a large building used for, lots of offices and things like that, I would think that some of the efforts to make this building energy efficient could translate to smaller businesses, homes around the area. So I think that's another strong benefit of using this federal building as a demonstration project.
Yeah, not just commercial, but residential as well, or small business, right? We hear a lot about this in town, and we see examples. The new solar panels at the Missoula Federal Credit Union, but and people haven't really gotten a sense of the library, but they will. I think there's going to be a lot of outreach on the library about what that's going to mean for renewable energy and energy efficiency. But yeah, I don't. Connecting it to folks and sort of continuing to make it a priority. We have a lot of priorities in this town, and
Right.
and sometimes I feel that our carbon neutrality goal gets lost in that mix.
In my head, I'm constantly thinking about energy efficiency and how can we reduce energy from a personal standpoint and from a city of Missoula standpoint. But I also recognize that while that's something that I'm thinking about a lot, if I were to walk up and down my street and talk with my neighbors, energy efficiency may very well not be the first thing that they're thinking of. And, kind of trying to see the world through other people's eyes as well as my own. A project like this, if it's something that is visible, can kind of continually represent and reintroduce the ideas of these are specific things that can be done.
Right. Have field trips, kids from school, high school kids come over for field trips, at community groups, running pieces in the paper or on the TV. These are the kind of things. So I worked in one of these buildings. I mentioned the research support facility at NREL, and I worked there for 2.5 years, and it was a constant stream of people from all over the world, and from pure technical experts to interested citizens, learning about this building and becoming motivated about what they've done and how it looks, and just sort of building excitement about it. And so one of the reasons I climbed onto this is I worked in one of these buildings, and people really do believe in it, and it gets a lot of PR out there, that's for sure. And like you said, we have a lot of priorities. The city right now is swamped with issues with whether it's homelessness or traffic issues or whatever. Their plate is full, and so not that they aren't important, not that I don't want to do any of those things, but I do feel that our carbon goals are kind of getting lost, and that they may make it to the bullet list. People wave their arms and say this is important, but what I'm seeing is other organizations like the Missoula Library I call it the board, but whatever it is, doing things, companies like Stockman Bank doing things, but the city kind of getting lost in some of that stuff because of other priorities.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna have to jump off here, but thank you, Chris and Jeremy. Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. And agree we should move forward with the federal building as order enforcement for the health department about the field trip to the landfill. I would just suggest though that you don't ride together to do that, and that you stay distanced and masked, and that outdoor field trip would be the best.
And even with the
yeah,
outdoor,
sure.
we'll wear masks.
Yeah, and then what I was, I agree with what you were saying about the changes and about the deep focus on all of the issues surrounding energy and climate from the city, and we need to be a part of that entity that can help refocus that information. And what I was getting at earlier with the changes coming up soon in state regulation, Chris, too, was not just about methane digesters, but just all across the board with anything to do with energy and climate, that we may be looking at a much less friendly environment coming up pretty soon on the state level. So making sure that we do what we can to really shore up the efforts that are going on locally. But thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Agreed. Thank you, Michael.
Good. And Michael, good luck with our current outbreak. I know you guys are doing the very best you can, and we're rooting for you every step of the way.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, just tell everybody to wear a mask.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so next steps on this is we'll leave, I'll send this out again, or I'll just send a note saying, okay, provide comments in the next week. And then I'll set up a meeting with Amber about next steps with her. We may need to, we would need to approve a letter like this before we would formally send it to her committee. But her and I can be working on it, and maybe we'll see this ready to for approval at the December 10th meeting.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other non-action items that didn't show up on the agenda? All right. We had no action items today. So any last words for the good of the order? I want to thank Megan and Kristen again for helping us out and getting us up and running at full steam, and look forward to working with both of you guys going forward, and we really do appreciate it.
So Chris, we are scheduled going forward for, what is it, the second Thursday of each month from 12 to 2?
Through April, yeah.
Okay, excellent. I will make sure that those are on my calendar.
All right, so with no other comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Chris.
Brian.
You bet, Brian.